The Empire had ruled 17 star systems for 10,000 years. No species had ever refused them. No army had ever defeated them. When their warships appeared in the sky, planets surrendered. This was the way of things. This was the only way. King sat on his crystal throne and watched the human ship land in his courtyard. The vessel was small and ugly. It had no weapons that his scanners could find. The beings inside were even smaller and uglier. He had seen pictures of humans before. Soft skin, weak bones, short lives. They lived for less than 100 years, which was barely enough time for a child to learn to walk. The court gathered to watch the entertainment. Nobles in silk robes whispered and laughed behind their hands. Guards stood tall with plasma lances ready, though no one expected trouble. This was a trade negotiation. The humans wanted to buy minerals from space. They would offer something pathetic. The king would demand their submission. They would kneel like everyone else. Princess sat beside her father's throne on a smaller chair made of white crystal. She was young by standards, only 400 years old, but she had already seen dozens of species come to this room. They all looked the same after a while. Terrified, desperate, willing to give anything to avoid destruction. She had studied humans before this meeting. Their planet was covered mostly in water. Their bodies broke easily. They fought wars against each other constantly, which seemed stupid to her. Why would a species waste energy fighting itself when there were real enemies in the galaxy? She expected nothing interesting from them. The doors of the throne room opened, walked in. He was not what expected. The human was tall for his kind, but still much shorter than any. His skin was brown and smooth. His hair was black and cut short. He wore a simple gray suit with no decorations or symbols of rank. Behind him walked two assistants, a woman named Bora and a man named, both carrying data tablets. The court fell silent as the humans approached the throne. Every species that entered this room followed the same pattern. They walked slowly. They kept their eyes down. When they reached the proper distance from the throne, they fell to their knees and pressed their foreheads to the floor. Did not do this. He walked at a normal pace. He looked around the room with calm interest, like a tourist visiting a museum. When he reached the spot where visitors were supposed to kneel, he stopped and looked directly at the king. He looked the king in the eyes. In culture, this was a killing offense. Only equals could meet the gaze of royalty, and no one was equal to the king. Guards shifted their weight. Nobles gasped. One advisor actually fainted, but just smiled. "Your Majesty," he said. His voice was clear and steady. "The Earth Confederation sends its greetings. We come as equals to discuss trade between our peoples." King leaned forward on his throne. In 3,000 years of rule, no one had ever spoken to him like this. He should have been angry. He should have ordered the humans' death immediately. But instead, he felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt curious. "You dare to stand before me?" the king asked. "You dare to meet my eyes?" "I do," said. "With respect, Your Majesty, I represent 8 billion people. They sent me here to speak for them, not to crawl for them." The court exploded in whispers. Guards looked at each other, waiting for the order to attack. But the king raised one massive hand, and everyone fell silent. "Your species is young," said. "You have been traveling between stars for less than 200 years. We have ruled this region of space for 10,000 years. What makes you think you are our equals?" Smile did not fade. "History, Your Majesty." "Explain." Humans have a saying, "It is not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog." We are small. We are young. We are weak compared to you. But we have survived everything the universe has thrown at us. Ice ages, plagues, wars. We even dropped nuclear weapons on ourselves and lived through it. Every empire that tried to conquer us is now dust while we are still here. Princess found herself leaning forward. She had never heard anyone speak to her father this way. More importantly, she had never seen her father listen to anyone this way. You have no fleet, said. I have 10,000 warships in orbit around this planet. I could destroy your Earth with a single order. You could try, said. Many have tried, none have succeeded, and those who failed are no longer remembered. The king stared at the human for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked the entire court. He laughed. It was not a kind laugh. It was the laugh of a predator who had found interesting prey. But it was still a laugh, and the king had not laughed in over a century. I like you, human, said. You are foolish, but you are brave. We will negotiate, but I warn you now, do not make deals with lesser species. You will accept our terms or you will be destroyed. There is no third option. Bowed his head slightly, the first sign of respect he had shown. We shall see, your majesty, we shall see. As the human delegation was led to their quarters, Princess watched them go. The one called walked like he owned the palace, like he had already won something that no one else could see. She told herself he was just a fool who did not understand his danger. But somewhere deep inside, she was not sure. The negotiations lasted 3 cycles. Each cycle on Prime was 30 hours long, and by the end of the 3rd day, the delegation was exhausted. The humans were not. Sat across from the king's advisors in a room made of blue crystal. The walls showed images of conquests, burning cities, kneeling armies, broken flags. The images were meant to frighten visitors, to remind them what happened to those who refused the empire. Ignored the images completely. Your offer is unacceptable, he said for the 20th time. Earth will not provide workers for your mining operations. Earth will not give you control of our shipping lanes. Earth will not bow. The chief advisor, an ancient named, slammed his fist on the table. The crystal cracked under his strength. Every species accepts these terms. The accepted. Even the burning ones of Sector 9 accepted, and they are made of fire. We are not them, said calmly. We are human. What does that mean? It means we would rather die free than live as slaves. Looked at the other advisors. None of them understood this creature. How could any species be so stupid? They offered protection, safety. All they asked in return was obedience. It was a fair trade. It was the only trade. After each failed session, the human delegation returned to their quarters in the west wing of the palace. They had been given simple rooms, nothing like the luxury that other visitors received. This was meant as an insult. The humans did not seem to notice. They laughed and talked and played music on small devices they had brought from Earth. They treated the palace cleaning machines like pets, giving them names and talking to them in silly voices. The behavior confused the guards who watched them. Princess watched too. She did not know why she kept coming to the West Wing. She told herself it was her duty to study the enemy, but the truth was simpler. She was curious. These strange, small creatures fascinated her in ways she could not explain. One evening she found alone in the palace garden. He sat on a stone bench, looking up at the 3 moons of Prime. He did not seem surprised when she approached. "Princess," he said without turning around, "I wondered when you would stop hiding and talk to me." Felt heat rise to her face. She had thought she was being careful. "I was not hiding." "Of course not." He finally turned to look at her. In the moonlight his eyes seemed to glow. "Please sit. I promise I will not bite. Humans only bite food." She hesitated, then sat on the other end of the bench. She towered over him, but somehow she did not feel larger. She felt like they were the same size. "Why do you refuse our terms?" she asked. "My father will destroy your worlds. He has done it before. I have seen the recordings. Whole planets turned to ash." "Have you ever asked yourself if that was right?" asked. The question confused her. Right, it was necessary. Those species refused to submit. They had to be destroyed as an example. An example of what? Cruelty, fear, shook his head. Humans have tried ruling by fear. It never works. People who are afraid will obey for a while, but eventually they will rebel. The only way to build something that lasts is through respect, through fairness, through treating others as you want to be treated. That is foolish, said. The strong rule the weak, that is the way of the universe. Is it, or is that just what the strong tell themselves so they can sleep at night? Had no answer to that. She had never thought about such things. The way was the only way she knew. They sat in silence for a moment, then spoke again. I have a daughter, he said. She is 7 years old. When I left Earth, she cried and asked me not to go. I told her I had to. I told her I was going to make the galaxy safe for her. You will fail, said quietly. Maybe, but I have to try. That is what humans do. We try, we fail, we try again. We keep trying until we succeed or until we die. And even then someone else picks up where we left off. He looked at her with those strange, warm eyes. Do your people have anything like that? Something worth dying for? Thought about the question. She had never thought about dying for anything. Lived so long that death seemed far away, almost imaginary. They did not fight for causes. They fought because they were ordered to. Before she could answer, a messenger burst into the garden. Princess, your father demands the human's presence. The final session will begin now. Stood and straightened his jacket. Well then, let us see how this ends. The throne room was packed with nobles. King sat on his crystal throne, his face as cold as ice. He had lost patience with the negotiations. He had decided to end them. Human, he said as entered, I have given you every chance. I have been more patient with you than with any other species, but my patience is finished. You will accept our terms tonight, or I will order my fleet to destroy Earth tomorrow. Every human in the universe will die. Your species will be forgotten. This is your last chance. The room was silent. Every eye was on. He took a deep breath, then he smiled. Then I invoke the right of claim. The words hit the room like a bomb. Nobles screamed. Advisors shouted. Guards raised their weapons, but stood calm and still in the center of the chaos. King's face went pale. What did you say? The right of claim, repeated. Article 7 of the ancient laws. Any being may challenge the crown by seizing something of value and defending it in combat. The law cannot be refused. The law cannot be changed. I know your history, your majesty. I know your laws. The king looked at. The old advisor nodded slowly. The law was real. It was ancient. No one had used it in 5,000 years, but it still existed. What do you claim? The king asked through clenched teeth. Walked toward the throne. Guards moved to stop him but raised a hand. The law protected him now. He climbed the steps. He stopped in front of Princess, and he took her hand. I claim the princess, he said, and with her humanity's right to be treated as equals. His heart stopped. The room exploded, and the king could do nothing but watch. The throne room had never known such chaos. Nobles pushed against each other trying to see. Guards shouted orders that no one followed. Somewhere in the back, an old advisor collapsed from shock, and through it all, stood on the steps of the throne, holding Princess's hand like it was the most normal thing in the universe. Kill him, someone screamed. He touched the princess, kill him now. But no one moved. The ancient law was clear. The right of claim protected the claimant from all harm until the challenge was complete. To break this law would destroy 10,000 years of tradition. It would make every other law meaningless. The entire empire was built on these old rules and had just used them as a weapon. King rose from his throne. He was over 9 feet tall, and his shadow covered completely. His eyes burned with a fire that had destroyed civilizations. How did you learn of this law? He demanded. No outsider has ever known of the right of claim. His voice was calm. I read your archives, your majesty. Humans are curious creatures. When we visit a new place, we study everything, your history, your culture, your laws, all of it. I spent 6 months learning your language. I spent another year studying your legal codes, every word, every rule, every ancient tradition that your own people have forgotten. You planned this from the beginning. I planned for every possibility. I hoped we could make a fair deal. I hoped you would see us as equals, but I knew that might not happen, so I prepared." The king stared at this small creature who had outsmarted an empire. Hatred burned in his chest, but there was something else too, something that felt almost like respect. "The right of claim requires combat," said. "You must defeat a champion of my choosing within 3 days. If you lose, you die. Your claim dies with you, and your planet will burn." "I understand." "Do you? I will choose the greatest warrior in the history of the Empire. General has killed 10,000 enemies with his own hands. He has never been defeated. He has never been wounded. He will tear you apart like paper." Nodded, "Then I will fight General." A gasp ran through the crowd. Even the guards who hated felt something like pity. Was not just a warrior, he was a legend. He was death in physical form. The human had just signed his own death sentence. Princess finally spoke. Her hand was still in his grip and she could feel his pulse. It was fast but steady. He was afraid, she realized, but he was not panicking. "Release me," she said quietly. "I cannot," replied. "Not until the challenge is complete. The law says the claimed must stay with the claimant until the matter is settled." "You are using me." "Yes," he did not lie, he did not apologize. "But I am not trying to hurt you. You are my witness. When I win, you will tell the galaxy what happened here. You will tell them that humans do not surrender. When you win, you are going to die, human. We'll kill you before you can blink." Smiled, it was a strange smile, sad and brave at the same time. "Maybe, but I have to try." The king waved his hand. "Take them to the holding chambers. The challenge will begin in 3 days. Let the human spend his final hours preparing to die." Guards escorted and out of the throne room. The nobles parted like water, staring at the human who had dared to touch their princess. Some spat at him, some cursed his name. He ignored them all. The holding chambers were in the east tower of the palace. They were comfortable rooms, not prison cells, but guards stood at every door. There was no escape. Was given the larger room. Was placed in the smaller room next door. A door connected them, as the law required the claim to remain near the claimant. That night could not sleep. She stood at her window and watched the 3 moons cross the sky. Her mind was spinning with questions she had never asked before. She heard sounds from the next room, strange sounds, rhythmic and steady. She opened the connecting door and found exercising. He was doing something he called push-ups, raising and lowering his body with his arms over and over again. Sweat covered his skin. His breathing was heavy but controlled. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Training," he said without stopping. "I have 3 days to prepare for the fight of my life." "No amount of training will help you against." "Probably not." He kept going, up and down, but I have to try." She watched him for a while. His body was so strange to her, so soft and fragile. No armor, no claws, no natural weapons of any kind. How had such a species survived in a dangerous universe? "Tell me about your daughter," she said suddenly. Stopped and looked at her. For a moment his mask of calm confidence slipped. She saw the fear underneath, the love, the desperate hope. He said softly, "She has her mother's eyes. She loves to draw pictures of spaceships. She wants to be an explorer when she grows up. She wants to see every star in the galaxy." "And her mother?" "She died 2 years ago, a disease that we could not cure in time." He was quiet for a moment. "Is all I have left." Did not know what to say, did not love the way humans did. Their lives were too long, attachments faded over centuries. But she could see that love for his daughter was powerful, real, unbreakable. "You are doing this for her," she said. "I am doing this for all of them, all the children on Earth who deserve to grow up free, all the humans who will be born after I am gone." He started doing push-ups again. "But yes, mostly I am doing this for returned to her room but left the door open. She lay on her bed and listened to the sounds of the human preparing for death, push-ups, sit-ups, running in place, hour after hour. He was going to die. She was certain of it. But somewhere in her heart, a small voice whispered a question she could not ignore. What if he wins? General arrived at the palace on the second day. His shuttle landed in the main courtyard, and even the bravest guard stepped back when he emerged. He was over 10 feet tall, bigger than any other alive. His skin was not just black like obsidian. It was covered in bone armor that had grown from his own body over centuries of combat. His eyes were not just bright. They were the color of burning stars. He walked into the throne room and knelt before the king, not because he had to, but because he chose to. That was the difference between and everyone else. He had earned the right to do whatever he wanted. He chose to show respect. "My king," he said, his voice was deep enough to shake the walls, "I hear you need someone killed." King gestured toward a screen that showed exercising in his room. "A human has invoked the right of claim. He has taken my daughter. You will fight him tomorrow and end this insult." Watch the screen. The human was practicing dodges and rolls. He moved quickly for such a small creature, but it was meaningless. Speed meant nothing against overwhelming power. "Is this a joke?" the general asked. "This is the great threat. I have killed insects larger than this." "He is clever," the king warned. "He knows our laws better than we do. Do not underestimate him." "I do not underestimate anyone. I simply destroy them." Stood. "Where is the creature? I want to see him before I kill him." Guards led to the East Tower. Princess was standing in the hallway when he arrived. She looked at the general who had been her hero since childhood. Every child grew up hearing stories of victories. He was the closest thing they had to a god. "Princess," said with a slight bow, "I apologize that you have been caught in this situation. By tomorrow evening you will be free and this human will be dead." "He is not what I expected," said quietly. "They never are. The weak ones often seem brave at first. It is easy to be brave when death is far away. Tomorrow, when he faces me in the arena, you will see his true nature. They all break. They all beg. They all die." The door to his room opened. The human stood there, sweat dripping from his face, his breathing heavy from exercise. He looked up at and did not flinch. "General," he said, "I have heard much about you. And I have heard nothing about you. That is the difference between us." Smiled not for long. Laughed. It was a terrible sound, like rocks crashing together. "I will enjoy killing you, little creature. I have killed thousands, but I have never killed a human. You will be a new trophy for my collection." "I have watched every recording of your fights," said. "All 732 of them. I know how you move. I know how you think. I know every pattern, every habit, every weakness." "I have no weaknesses." "Everyone has weaknesses. Yours is arrogance." The words hung in the air like smoke. No one had ever spoken to this way. Guards held their breath, felt her heart pounding. Leaned down until his face was inches from us. His breath was hot enough to burn skin. His eyes were bright enough to blind. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "I will tear you apart so slowly that you will beg for death. And I will not give it to you. Not until you have screamed for hours. Not until every human watching from their pathetic little planet knows that their species is nothing, less than nothing." Did not step back, he did not blink. "We will see." Stood and walked away. His footsteps cracked the stone floor. That night did not exercise. He sat in his room with a data tablet, watching recordings of fights over and over again. Watched him from the doorway. "What are you looking for?" she asked. "Patterns," he said. "Every fighter has patterns, ways they like to start. Moves they repeat when they are tired. Angles they favor is no different. He is the greatest warrior in our history. He has never lost because no one has ever survived long enough to learn his patterns. His fights last seconds, minutes at most. No one has ever made him fight for an hour." Looked up at her. That is my plan. I cannot beat him in strength. I cannot beat him in speed, but I can outlast him. That is impossible. Impossible is just a word people use when they cannot imagine a solution. He returned to his tablet. Humans have a sport called boxing, two fighters standing face to face trying to knock each other down. Sometimes a small fighter faces a big fighter. The small fighter cannot win with power, so instead he dances. He dodges. He moves constantly, making the big fighter chase him. The big fighter gets tired. He gets frustrated. He makes mistakes. And then sometimes the small fighter wins. Sat down across from him. You are planning to run away. That is your great strategy. I am planning to survive. Every minute I stay alive is a minute closer to victory. He paused the recording on a frame of mid-swing. Look, see how he drops his left shoulder before every overhead strike. That is a tell. I can use that. You will still die. Maybe. He looked at her with those strange, warm eyes. But I have to try, for Earth, for every human who will ever be born. If I give up now, I betray all of them. Did not understand this kind of thinking. Did not sacrifice themselves for future generations. They lived too long to care about such things. But watching, she felt something stir in her chest, something old and forgotten. Teach me, she said suddenly. Raised an eyebrow. Teach you what? Your patterns, your analysis. Show me how you see the fight. They spent the rest of the night watching recordings together, pointed out every detail he had found. The way always started with a right-hand strike. The way he circled left when pressing an attack. The way his breathing changed when he was getting ready to charge. By morning saw the general differently. He was still terrifying, still unstoppable. But he was no longer a god. He was just a fighter with patterns. She still thought would die. But for the first time, she was not certain. The arena was built from white stone and crystal. It had stood for 8,000 years, and in all that time, no challenger had ever won against a royal champion. The blood of 10,000 failed warriors stained the floor beneath layers of polish. Today, everyone expected to add human blood to that collection. Every noble house in the empire sent representatives. They filled the seats until there was no room left and still more crowded at the entrances. This was history. A foolish little human had challenged the greatest warrior alive. They wanted to see him die. King sat in the royal box with his advisors. His face was calm, but his hands gripped the arms of his chair. He wanted this over. He wanted the human dead and his daughter returned. He wanted to forget this had ever happened. Princess sat beside him. She had not slept. Her eyes were fixed on the arena floor, waiting. The drums began. Deep and slow, they echoed through the stadium like a heartbeat. The crowd fell silent. General entered first. He wore no armor because he did not need it. His bone-covered body was harder than any metal. In his hand, he carried a plasma blade, its edge glowing white-hot. He raised it above his head, and the crowd screamed his name. Then walked in. He wore his gray diplomatic suit. No armor, no weapons, nothing but the clothes he had arrived in and a small watch on his wrist. He looked tiny on the vast arena floor, like a child facing a monster. The crowd laughed. They pointed and mocked. Some threw things at him. He ignored them all. He walked to the center of the arena and stopped 10 feet from. The general looked down at him with contempt. Where is your weapon, little creature? I do not need one, said. Laughed. You are either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. The king raised his hand. The drums stopped. Silence fell over the arena. Let the challenge begin. Charged. He moved faster than anything that size should move. The plasma blade cut through the air in a deadly arc aimed its neck. The crowd held its breath. Was not there. He had moved the moment he saw his left shoulder drop, just like in the recordings. He rolled sideways and the blade passed through empty air. Stumbled, surprised by the miss. The general spun and attacked again. Another swing. Another miss. Moved like water, flowing around each strike without ever touching the blade. The crowd's laughter died. This was not right. The human should be dead. Why was he still alive? Pressed harder. He unleashed a flurry of attacks that would have killed any normal opponent 100 times over. His blade cut through the air so fast it screamed. The floor cracked beneath his feet. The very air seemed to burn. Dodged everything. He did not run away. He stayed close, always just out of reach, moving at the last possible second. He had watched those recordings 1,000 times. He knew where every attack would go before did. Minutes passed, 5, 10, 20. The crowd was silent now. They had never seen anything like this, was breathing hard. His movements were slower. His attacks were less precise. He was getting tired. "Stand still," the general roared. "Face me like a warrior." "I am facing you," said. He was breathing hard too, but his voice was steady. "I am just doing it my way." 30 minutes, 40, 50. Was exhausted. His swings were wild now, desperate. He had never fought this long. No one had ever made him fight this long. His muscles burned. His lungs screamed for air. And still the human danced. At the 1-hour mark, did something no one expected. He stopped dodging. He walked toward, arms open, completely defenseless. The general raised his blade, ready to strike. The crowd screamed for blood. "Kill me," said. His voice carried across the silent arena. "Strike down an unarmed man who has invoked the ancient law. Show the galaxy what honor truly means." His blade hung in the air. He looked at the human standing before him, small, soft, helpless. All he had to do was swing, one swing and it would be over. But the human had done nothing wrong. He had followed every rule. He had fought fairly. He had earned his survival through skill and endurance. To kill him now like this would be murder. It would break the law that had served his entire life. The general's arm trembled. The blade wavered. And then did something he had never done in 732 fights. He lowered his weapon. "I yield," he said. The arena exploded. Nobles screamed in disbelief. Guards stood frozen. The king rose from his chair, his face pale as death. But the law was absolute, had yielded. The challenge was over. Had won. King descended from the royal box. He walked across the arena floor until he stood before the human who had humiliated his empire without throwing a single punch. "You have your equality," the king said. His voice was cold but controlled. "The empire will recognize humanity as equals. Release my daughter." Turn 2, who had followed her father onto the floor. Gently, he released her hand. "The princess was never my prisoner," he said. "She was my witness, so the galaxy would know that humans bow to no one." Looked at this strange creature who had done the impossible. He had won through knowledge, patience, and an unbreakable will. He had beaten an empire without firing a shot. "Why did you stop dodging?" she asked quietly. "He could have killed you." "No," said. "I knew he could not. I studied him for a year. Is cruel, but he is also proud. His pride would not let him murder an unarmed man who had fought fairly. I bet my life on his honor." "That is insane." "That is human." The treaty was signed that evening. Earth and the empire would be equals. Trade would be fair. No human would ever kneel to an alien king. As prepared to leave came to the spaceport. She stood at the edge of his shuttle, towering over him as always. But somehow she did not feel larger anymore. "I have a request," she said. "Ask." "I want to see Earth. I want to meet your daughter. I want to understand how a species so small can be so strong." Smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen from him. Not brave, not confident, just happy. "You are welcome anytime, princess." She shook her head. "Not princess, not anymore, just—" The shuttle lifted off. Watched it until it became a star among stars. racing toward a small blue planet where a 7-year-old girl waited for her father to come home. She made her decision then. She would follow. She would learn. And maybe, just maybe, she would understand why humans were the strangest, bravest, most impossible species in the galaxy.